So I listened to a podcast yesterday that was given to me by someone that I was working with, which seems really attractive for, any sex addiction issues, because the healing time that many people purport is 3 to 5 years for sex addicts, and that seems like a really long time when you're first starting out. And this particular podcast said that with certain types of connection with other people, especially with significant others like your spouse, that with this type of communication, individuals can heal much quicker than the purported 3 to 5 years. And I just wanted to address that really quickly. This particular individual was saying that in sessions, when he taught certain communication skills, that the sex addict and traumatized partner could voice their emotions with great deals of vulnerability, and that they could walk out of the office hand in hand, hugging and in good spirits, which it can be really rare when we're dealing with infidelity. Now, I want you to understand that I do not believe it's impossible for a couple to walk into a therapy session in a lot of turmoil and walk out in peace and harmony. That's happened many, many times over the years as I've worked with sex addiction. Now, with that said, I am not too keen on the idea of healing from sex addiction taking less than 3 to 5 years. It's not that it can't happen. I believe that there are miracles out there, and I think healing does happen a lot quicker than 3 to 5 years. But I don't believe that healing is, I don't think it's a process that really ends. I personally think that healing from sex addiction takes a lifetime. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about my experience in my recovery so that you have an idea of what recovery takes and what it looks like. So here goes. So when I was 12, I started my sex addiction. It was probably a year or so later, I'm guessing, where I started thinking that I was an addict, because I was trying to stop doing what I was doing and I couldn't. And it dawned on me that when you can't stop doing something, that you must be addicted to it. And that conclusion came to me, I'm guessing, within a year or two after I had started. So first of all, I want you to understand that it took me at least a year to recognize that I was a sex addict. For many other people, it takes a lot longer. So just the realization of being in addiction can take multiple years. Then my second step in the recovery process was learning how to stop acting out. Now, I can tell you that my acting out continued very heavily until I was roughly 31 or 32 years of age. Now, when you take a look at that, that is roughly 20 years. Okay, so I was very ineffective at getting clean, although I was working at it for roughly 20 years. And that's just getting clean from sexual acting out, the sexual behaviors. For some people, it takes a lot longer. Other people, it can be super fast, but for me, it roughly took 20 years. Now, sex addiction, or the effects of sex addiction, run a lot deeper than just quitting the sexual behavior. There are a lot of emotional struggles that occur during acting out, and there are a lot of emotional struggles after quitting acting out, or once you become sexually sober. For me, this whole time, I believe that I had lots of negativity that ran through me. And I held all of that in. And it wasn't until I got clean for about 5 years where rage just came all out of me. And when it did, it really traumatized my wife. Now, let me back up a little bit. The sex addiction was found out when I was roughly, I think it was 26 or 20, I think it was 27 years of age, on my first anniversary with my wife. She found out on my first anniversary. That was one trauma for her. That lasted, well, I think it still affects her, but I didn't get clean until 5 years after she found out. So, lots of trauma in the marriage. Now, then I got clean. 5 years later, rage took a hold of me and she was traumatized again. So, more marital problems. In fact, I think the marital problems were much deeper after I raged than they were when I was sexually acting out. So, notice how my addiction in and of itself was affecting me as an individual. Then it started affecting my wife. Once I got clean, there was more trauma that happened because I had a lot of underlying anger. And this whole time, my wife and I were really struggling to get along and to work together. So there's a factor here, another factor that needs to be healed. At this point in my marriage, it's been probably 5 years since I've been working on my rage, and that took me multiple years just to calm that down a little bit. I shouldn't say a little bit, a lot, to get to a point where I could handle my negativity, but it didn't take the negativity away. Now what's happening is I still have anger that runs through me, and it's not nearly as severe, and I'm much better at managing it, but it still occurs. Now, I continue to go to my support meetings, and I work with a sponsor, and I make daily phone calls, and I read and I write, monitoring and evaluating my emotions. Let's say about 5 years ago, I learned a communication skill, probably just similar to the communication skill this guy from this podcast was talking about and teaching, that when you learn communication skills, relationships improve, and I believe that's totally true. However, learning a communication skill is like learning a second language. It takes a lot of time because we don't recognize how we're communicating. We don't recognize the subliminal messages that we're sending to our spouses, and the pain that these messages cause. And I'll just give you a quick example, because this just happened like 2 days ago. I had gotten in the fridge and I saw an open can of tuna that was not covered. And I knew that my wife had been feeding our cat. And I pulled the can of tuna out, and I looked at my wife. She was standing right there, and I said, "Hey, honey," and I showed her the can. And I said, "Hey, honey, if you don't cover the tuna, it'll dry out." And she said, "I know." Okay, so why is this so important? Okay, well, in my communication strategies, or skills, I should say, I often point things out that I believe that my wife is doing wrong. In this particular case with the tuna fish, I was basically telling her that the way that she was storing tuna was not effective, and that the tuna would dry out, and that the cat would not like to eat the tuna, and her way was wrong and my way was right, or better than hers, which also implies that I'm smart and she's not, at least to a degree. When I communicate that way, it in the past has not gone very well, as you can see. And I believe that this is a main issue in our marriage, where I can communicate in such a style that it's not received very well. And so I'm learning the subtleties of communication and the messages that I'm sending to my wife. And like I said earlier, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of awareness, a lot of writing. I speak with people about it almost every day so that I don't forget and so that I can catch my tongue, so that I can improve my marriage rather than tear it down, which is what I was doing in a very simple example with tuna fish. But I have done that in very severe ways in my marriage. So the healing from sex addiction is not just healing from sexually acting out. We have to become aware of the addiction. We then have to become clean and sober from sexually acting out, and all the while working on our emotional state. Because if we don't get into a positive state, the likelihood of us going back out to our sexual acting out behaviors is pretty high. And if we don't improve our relationships with others, then the likelihood again goes up for us to go back out to our sexual behaviors. And so there's a lot to learn. It's very complex, and I believe it takes a lifetime for us to improve. That doesn't mean that we won't enjoy a lot of positivity in our recovery, because we do. You know, I've enjoyed a lot of time with my wife and my family, and I continue to seek to improve so that my life gets better, so that their life gets better.